A girl walked into my salon with a man at least twice her size. Shave all of it off. That was the first thing he said. No hello, no explanation. Just that. The girl didn't say a word. When she sat down, I noticed right away how bad her hair looked. It was tangled, dry, uneven, like it hadn't been washed in weeks. I tried to keep things normal. I asked her what we were doing today. But the second she opened her mouth, he stepped forward. He said he had already told me what we were doing. Said I had 20 minutes, and after that they were leaving no matter what. Said they had somewhere else to be. Something about the way he said it made me uneasy. I nodded and walked her over to the sink. I leaned her head back and lifted the hair from her forehead. That's when I saw it. Written in black marker, right on her skin, "Help me." For a moment I froze, but I kept the water running and forced myself to keep working like nothing was wrong. Inside, I felt cold. I looked at her. She was staring at me like I was the last person who could do anything for her. I checked where the man was. He was a few steps away, watching us closely. I glanced at the clock. 17 minutes. I stepped away from the sink, pretending I needed a towel, but really I was trying to get to my phone. I took a few steps. Then I felt it. That look. I turned slightly and saw him watching me. Suspicious. So I grabbed the towel instead and went back. 15 minutes. I kept working. Then she slowly pulled up her sleeves. That's when I saw her hands. Covered in scars, old ones, new ones. My stomach dropped. Something was very, very wrong. I grabbed a small receipt and quickly wrote a message asking someone to call the police. I walked toward the front desk and tried to hand it to my coworker, Megan Brooks. Before she could even look at it, he raised his voice from his chair. He asked what I had just given her. Everything stopped. Megan looked confused. She looked at the paper, then at him. I quickly said it was nothing, just something to throw away. She didn't question it. She tossed it in the trash. Without reading it, 12 minutes. He stood up, asked how much time was left. I showed him a section of her hair and said the knots went all the way down. If I rushed, I could hurt her. He didn't like that, but he sat back down, this time closer. I leaned in to fix the cape around her shoulders. That's when she whispered something. So quiet I almost missed it. She said if she left with him, she wouldn't come back. 9 minutes. My heart started racing. The back room was about 20 steps away. I could get there, call the police, and be back in under a minute, but that meant leaving her alone with him. 6 minutes. I looked around the salon. Everyone was busy. The front desk was on a call. No one was paying attention. I had no options. 1 minute. He stood up and walked straight toward us. He said to give him the clippers. Said he would do it himself. And right when he reached toward the counter, the front door suddenly opened. 2 police officers rushed through the front door. For a second, nobody in the salon moved. Everything just stopped. The dryers, the conversations, even the music in the background suddenly felt distant. The officers walked straight toward him, toward Derek Lawson. He looked confused at first, then angry. One of the officers told him not to move. The other grabbed his arm before he could say anything else. Every woman in the salon was staring now. I stepped back so fast I almost dropped the clippers. Emily didn't move. She stayed frozen in the chair beside me, gripping the armrests so tightly her knuckles turned white. Derek started arguing immediately, saying there had been some mistake, saying he didn't do anything wrong, but the officers didn't seem interested in hearing it. One of them pushed him against the wall, while the other placed handcuffs on him. The entire salon stayed silent. I remember hearing someone near the front desk quietly asking what was happening. Nobody answered. Derek kept trying to look at Emily. That was the worst part. Even while they were dragging him toward the door, he kept staring at her like he expected her to defend him. She couldn't even look back at him. Her eyes stayed locked on the floor. One officer asked if she was okay. She nodded once, but it looked automatic, like she wasn't even fully there. Then they took him outside. And just like that, he was gone. The second the door closed behind them, Emily grabbed my arm with both hands. Hard. Like she thought he might come back. She buried her face against my shoulder and started shaking. Not loud crying. Worse, the kind where someone tries so hard to hold it in that their whole body trembles instead. I just stood there holding her. Nobody in the salon said a word. After a while, I reached for a warm towel and gently wiped the marker off her forehead. The words slowly disappeared. Help me. Gone, but I couldn't stop seeing them. When she finally pulled away, her eyes were red and swollen. I asked if she wanted some water. She nodded. My coworker, Megan Brooks, brought her a bottle without saying much. She looked pale. I think she was still trying to process everything, too. A few minutes later, one of the officers came back inside. He asked if Emily could answer a few questions. The second he said that, panic flashed across her face. Real panic. She grabbed the sides of the chair again and quietly asked if Derek was still outside. The officer told her no, said he was gone. She still looked terrified. I noticed her breathing getting faster, so I stepped in and asked if maybe she could wait a minute first. The officer agreed. He walked back outside. Emily kept staring toward the windows like she expected Derek to walk back in at any second. I crouched beside her and told her she was safe now, but even saying it felt strange, because she looked like someone who hadn't felt safe in a very long time. A few minutes later, she finally spoke again, quietly. She asked how the police got there so fast. I looked toward Megan. That's when Megan admitted what happened. After throwing away the paper, she realized something felt wrong. She said the look on my face scared her. So while she was on the phone with another client, she opened the trash can and read the note anyway. Then she called 911 from the back office. Emily started crying again after hearing that. Not loudly. Just silent tears rolling down her face while she kept staring at her hands. That was when I noticed something else. There were dark bruises near her wrist, partly hidden under her sleeve. I suddenly understood why she kept pulling the fabric down every few seconds, like she didn't want anyone to see too much. The officer came back inside again. This time, Emily agreed to talk, but before she stood up, she looked at herself in the mirror. Really looked. Probably for the first time since she walked in. Her hair was still uneven and tangled from where I had started brushing through it. Mascara stains sat under her eyes. Her forehead was red where I had wiped the marker away. She barely recognized herself. Then she looked at me and asked something so quietly I almost didn't hear it. She asked if I could still do her hair afterward. I told her of course. For the first time since she arrived, her expression softened a little, just a little. Then she followed the officer outside, and the second the door closed behind her, the entire salon exploded into noise. Everyone started talking at once. People asking questions, saying they knew something felt wrong, saying he looked dangerous. But honestly, that part made me angry. Because nobody noticed until it became obvious. Nobody saw what was sitting right in front of us. Or maybe they saw it and didn't want to get involved. I don't know. About 30 minutes later, Emily came back inside. Without Derek, without that fear controlling every movement. But she still looked exhausted. The officer told me quietly that they found enough to keep him from leaving anytime soon. I didn't ask for details. Emily sat back down in my chair slowly. I looked at her through the mirror and asked what she wanted to do now. Her eyes filled with tears almost immediately. Then she gave a small shrug and asked if I could just make it look nice. I told Emily Carter we didn't have to rush anymore. The second I said that, she looked confused. Like the idea of taking her time felt unfamiliar to her. I gently started brushing through the knots in her hair again. This time, she didn't flinch every few seconds when someone moved nearby, but she still kept glancing at the front door. Like part of her expected Derek Lawson to walk back in. The salon had mostly calmed down by then, but everyone kept looking over at us, trying not to stare. Megan stayed near the front desk, pretending to organize appointments, but I could tell she was watching Emily too. Honestly, we all were. Not because we were curious, because she looked fragile, like one wrong word could break her apart completely. I asked her if she wanted me to cut it short like Derek wanted. She immediately shook her head. Fast. Almost panicked. Then she apologized for reacting like that. That apology made my chest hurt more than anything else that day. People who feel safe don't apologize for being scared. I told her she didn't need to say sorry for anything. She stayed quiet after that. I kept working slowly, carefully brushing through the damaged sections. A few minutes passed before she finally spoke again. She asked if the police were really going to keep him there. I told her I didn't know for sure, but they weren't going to let him just walk away after what they saw. She stared down at her hands again. Then she quietly admitted she thought nobody would believe her. I asked why. She shrugged a little, said Derek was good at sounding calm, good at making her look emotional and unstable whenever she tried to explain things. I didn't respond right away, because honestly, I had met men like that before, men who never had to raise their voice to scare someone. She told me they had been together almost 2 years. She met him after moving to Dallas for work. At first, he was patient, protective, helpful. That was the word she used. Helpful. He brought her food during long shifts, picked her up after work, remembered small details. She said nobody had ever paid attention to her like that before. Then little things started changing. He got upset when she spent time with friends. Then he started showing up unexpectedly to check on her. After that, He convinced her to quit her job because he said her coworkers were disrespectful. By the time she realized how controlling he had become, she said she already felt trapped. Listening to her made me feel sick. Not because it sounded unbelievable, because it sounded familiar. I had heard versions of this story before, just never this close, never sitting directly in front of me. I asked about the writing on her forehead. Her eyes immediately filled again. She said she wrote it while he stopped for gas before coming to the salon. Apparently he wanted to shave her head because he thought she was trying to get attention from other men. The room suddenly felt colder after she said that. I asked why he brought her to a salon if he planned to shave it all off anyway. She gave a weak shrug, then admitted he liked making her feel embarrassed in public. That answer stayed with me, because she said it so casually, like humiliation had become normal to her. I carefully trimmed a damaged section near the front and showed her the mirror. For the first time, she actually looked at herself for more than a second. I could see something changing in her expression. Not happiness, just relief. Small, but real. Megan eventually walked over and handed Emily a cup of tea. Emily looked surprised by that. Like kindness caught her off guard. She thanked her quietly and held the cup with both hands. A little later, one of the officers came back inside again. This time, he asked Emily if she had somewhere safe to stay tonight. The question immediately made her tense again. She admitted she didn't. Derek had made her stop talking to most of her family months ago, and since she quit her job, she didn't really have anyone nearby anymore. The officer said they could help her find somewhere temporary, but I could already see the fear returning to her face. Not fear of Derek this time, fear of being alone. I understood it immediately. Sometimes people stay in terrible situations because they honestly believe the alternative will hurt even more. Before I could stop myself, I heard myself speaking. I told her she could stay with me for a few days if she needed somewhere safe. The entire salon went quiet again. Even Megan looked surprised. Emily stared at me like she thought she heard wrong. I suddenly realized how crazy it sounded. I barely knew her. But I also knew I couldn't pretend everything was fine and send her away alone. Not after seeing that message on her forehead. The officer asked if I was sure. I hesitated for maybe 2 seconds. Then I nodded. Emily started crying again almost immediately. This time differently. Not from panic. Not from fear. It looked more like exhaustion. Like someone who had been holding themselves together for too long. She kept apologizing quietly. I told her to stop apologizing, but she kept doing it anyway. And honestly, that scared me almost as much as Derek did, because nobody says sorry that much unless someone taught them they're a burden. I finished trimming the ends of her hair and turned the chair slightly toward the mirror. I told her we could decide the rest later. She stared at herself silently for a long moment. Then she touched her own hair carefully, like she wasn't used to making choices about her own appearance anymore. And for the first time all day, I saw something in her face besides fear. It was small, but it was there. Hope. I didn't realize how tense my body was until things finally slowed down. Even after everything that happened, I kept expecting something else to go wrong. Emily sat quietly while I worked on her hair. She wasn't shaking anymore, but she also wasn't relaxed. It felt like her body didn't know how to be. Every time the door opened, even just for a new client, her shoulders tightened. She tried to hide it, but I noticed. I think everyone noticed. I kept my movements slow and steady. I didn't want to rush anything anymore. Not after everything she had just been through. At some point, Megan walked over again and asked if we needed anything. I could tell she felt guilty about earlier. About the note. Emily looked at her and said thank you again. That was it. But the way she said it, it stuck with me. Like even basic kindness still surprised her. I continued working through her hair, trimming the damaged parts little by little. I asked if she wanted to go shorter, something easier to manage. She hesitated, then nodded slightly. Not because she was sure, but because she trusted me to decide. That realization hit me harder than I expected. She wasn't used to making choices, not even small ones, so I kept it simple, clean, soft. Something that would grow back healthy. Something that looked like a fresh start without being too drastic. As I worked, she started talking again, slowly, carefully, like she was testing whether it was safe to say things out loud. She said Derek didn't always act like that in public. Usually he kept things quiet, controlled. At home it was different. Not louder, just worse. She said he didn't need to yell to make her feel small. That part stayed with me, because I understood exactly what she meant. Some people don't need noise to scare you. She told me he used to decide everything. What she wore, who she talked to, when she left the house. At first, she thought it was because he cared, that he was just protective. but over time it became something else, something heavier. She said the first time she tried to push back, he didn't argue. He just ignored her for days. Wouldn't talk. Wouldn't look at her. She said that felt worse than anything else. Like she didn't exist. So she stopped pushing back. Hearing that made my chest feel tight again, because I could see how it happened. Slow, quiet. Piece by piece, until there was nothing left of who she used to be. I finished shaping the front of her hair and turned the chair slightly so she could see better. She stared at herself again. Longer this time. Her expression changed, but not in a simple way. It wasn't just relief. There was sadness there too. Like she was realizing how much had changed. Not just her hair, everything. I asked if she liked it so far. She nodded. Then, after a second, she said it looked better than she expected. That was the closest thing to a smile I had seen from her, and even that felt fragile. The officer came back inside one more time while I was finishing up. He spoke quietly with Megan near the front. I didn't hear everything, but I caught enough. Derek wasn't getting out anytime soon. There were other things. Things they had found. Emily didn't hear it. Or at least I don't think she did. Part of me wondered if it was better that way. For now. When I finished, I removed the cape and brushed the loose hair off her shoulders. She sat there for a moment without moving, just looking at herself, like she was trying to recognize the person in the mirror. Then she reached up and touched her hair again, carefully, like it mattered. Like she mattered. I told her we could wash it again if she wanted, style it differently, anything. She shook her head, said this was enough. But the way she said it, it didn't feel like she was settling. It felt like she was overwhelmed, in a different way this time. Megan came over with her bag. Someone had gone outside earlier to bring it back in after everything happened. Emily looked at it like she wasn't sure if she even wanted to open it. I understood that too. Some things carry memories you're not ready to face. The officer approached us again and asked if she was ready. She nodded. But before standing up, she looked at me, and for a moment she didn't say anything. Then she reached out and held my hand. Just for a second. But it said everything she couldn't put into words. I told her we'd figure things out one step at a time. I don't know if I was saying it for her or for myself. Probably both. She followed the officer toward the door. This time, she didn't look back. And for the first time since she walked in, I felt like maybe she wasn't being pulled somewhere anymore. Maybe she was finally choosing where to go. I kept thinking about her long after she walked out, even while I cleaned my station, even while I pretended to focus on my next client. My mind was still with Emily Carter. It felt strange. I had seen difficult situations before. People come into salons carrying all kinds of problems, but this was different. This stayed with me. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I answered questions I barely heard, smiled when I was supposed to, nodded at the right moments, but none of it felt real. All I could think about was whether she was okay, whether she regretted leaving, whether she felt safe, or if she was already doubting everything. When my shift finally ended, I didn't go straight home. I waited. I sat in the break room longer than usual, checking my phone every few minutes. I wasn't even sure what I was waiting for. Then, about 40 minutes later, I got a message from Megan. She said Emily was with the officers, finishing some paperwork, and they were about to bring her back. My chest tightened again. Suddenly, everything felt real. I stepped outside and waited near the entrance. A few minutes later, a police car pulled up. Emily stepped out slowly. She looked different. Not better. Just different. Like everything finally hit her all at once. The adrenaline was gone. What was left looked like exhaustion. She saw me standing there and hesitated for a second, like she wasn't sure if I would still be there. I walked over and told her she didn't have to worry, that she could stay with me like I said. She nodded, but didn't speak. On the drive to my place, she stayed quiet. Not uncomfortable quiet, just empty. Like her mind was too full to process anything else. I didn't push her to talk. I just told her small things. Where we were going. How long it would take. Normal things. Things that didn't carry weight. When we got to my apartment, she stood at the door for a second before going in, like she needed to convince herself it was okay. I told her again that she was safe. She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't used to believing that. Inside, she stayed close to the entrance at first. Didn't sit down. Didn't touch anything. Just looked around. I told her she could take a shower if she wanted, that she could use anything she needed. At first, she said she was fine. Then a few seconds later, she asked if it was really okay. I said yes. She nodded and went to the bathroom. She stayed in there for a long time. long enough that I started to worry, but then I heard the water stop. A few minutes later, she came out. Her hair was damp, cleaner than before, falling more naturally now. She looked at herself in the mirror near the hallway, quietly, like she was trying to understand who she was again. I gave her a clean shirt and some comfortable clothes. She hesitated before taking them, then said thank you again, softly. She said it like it still surprised her. We sat in the living room after that. At first, neither of us spoke. I didn't want to overwhelm her, but I also didn't want her to feel alone. After a while, she asked what would happen next. I told her honestly that I didn't know everything, but that the officers would help her figure things out, that she wouldn't have to go back. The moment I said that, her eyes filled again. Not panic this time. Something else. Something quieter. She admitted she didn't know how to live without him. That scared me more than anything she had said before, because I understood what she meant. Not that she wanted him, but that her life had slowly been built around him, and now that structure was gone. Even if it was a bad one. She kept looking down at her hands, like she didn't know what to do with them, like she didn't know what to do with herself. I told her it was okay to feel lost, that it didn't mean she made the wrong choice. She didn't respond right away, but I could tell she was listening. Later that night, I showed her where she could sleep. I told her she could lock the door if she wanted. That seemed to matter to her, more than anything else. Before going to bed, she stopped in the hallway, looked back at me, and asked one thing. She asked if I thought he would come looking for her. I paused. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to scare her. So I told her the truth in the simplest way I could. I said that right now, he couldn't, and that she wasn't alone anymore. She nodded, then went into the room and closed the door. I stayed awake for a long time after that, listening, just in case. Not because I expected something to happen, but because I knew she probably felt the same way on the other side of that door, and I didn't want her to feel like she was the only one awake. The next morning felt different, quiet, but not heavy. I woke up early, out of habit. For a moment, I forgot everything. Then I saw the extra pair of shoes by the door, and it all came back. I made some coffee and kept things simple. No sudden noise, no pressure. After a while, I heard her door open. Slowly, Emily stepped out, looking unsure again, like she didn't know what the day expected from her. I told her good morning. She said it back, barely above a whisper, but it was the first time she spoke without sounding scared. That alone felt like progress. She sat at the table, holding the cup I gave her with both hands. Still that same habit, like she needed to hold on to something. We didn't talk much at first, and that was okay. After a few minutes, she asked what people usually do in situations like hers. I told her the truth. That everyone figures it out differently. That there wasn't one right way to start over. She nodded slowly. Then she said something that stayed with me. She said she didn't remember the last time she made a decision just because she wanted to, not because she had to. That hit me harder than I expected. So I asked her something simple. I asked what she wanted to do that day. She looked confused at first, then overwhelmed, like the question was too big, so I made it smaller. I asked if she wanted to go outside. Get some fresh air, walk around. Nothing complicated. She hesitated, then nodded. We kept it simple. Just a short walk, no pressure. At first, she stayed close to me, looking around like everything felt unfamiliar, even normal things. Cars passing, people talking, someone laughing in the distance, but after a while something shifted. Her shoulders relaxed a little. Her steps slowed down, not from fear, from calm. We stopped at a small place nearby and sat for a bit. She didn't say much, but she didn't look like she was holding her breath anymore either, and that felt like a big change. On the way back, she asked if she could go back to work someday. I told her yes. Maybe not immediately, but eventually. And when she did, it would be on her terms, not someone else's. She nodded again, stronger this time. Back at the apartment, she stood in front of the mirror for a while, looking at her hair, touching it again. Like she was still getting used to the idea that it was her choice now. I asked if she wanted me to fix anything else, adjust it, style it differently. She shook her head, then looked at me through the mirror. Her eyes filled again, but she didn't look away this time, and she asked quietly if I could just make it look nice. I smiled a little, because this time, it meant something completely different.